mission, I might have a toast with you. I'm feeling good, I'm feeling great, I'm terrific. We ain't taking no losses, we winning. Undefeated, check the percentage.
Yo, what's good, everybody, man? Sorry for the little bit of delay, but it's worth it, man, because I got my boy in the building, man. You already know what time it is, man. I appreciate everybody that tapped in. Y'all make sure hit the like button so we can get our peoples in here, man. Drop your comments, get active in the chat, man. You already know what time it is. With that being said, let me pull up my boy, man. Thor, man, the myth, the legend himself. What's good, bro?
How you doing?
I'm good, man. I appreciate you tapping in, man. Look, man, this is going to be exciting. I'm interested in a lot of the things that you know. I'm definitely going to pick your brain a little bit during this show. That's a fact, but man, let's get right to it, man. Everybody was super excited. First of all, man, everybody in the chat, man, shout out Norris. I was telling Thor backstage, Norris like moved his whole work schedule around for this. You know what I mean? That's special, man.
Shout out to Norris. Yeah, that is special. I appreciate that.
Yeah, no, that's a fact, man. So, I really want to get into, first of all, man, I said I got something for you. I want real quick. Are you from Kansas? Are you from Kansas?
Well, I'm from Brainerd, Minnesota, but I went to undergrad in Lawrence at Kansas.
Yeah. So you're a KU fan though?
Oh yeah.
So because I wanted to say we have something in common. So like you can see the video. So I got this, man.
Let's go.
Hey, look, man. So my wife and I'll be able to like screenshot and send it to you. And I brought a Kansas hat in the building too, man. I did this on purpose. Doing my homework on you. I've seen you and I've heard you, kind of speak on Kansas and stuff like that. And I'm like, you know what? That's crazy. My wife's from Topeka, and not too far from where they play and stuff like that. So I've been blessed enough to be involved with that family over there and be repping that red and blue hard. You know what I'm saying?
I've spent a little time in Topeka. It was only 30 minutes away from Lawrence, if I'm remembering right. But I remember we went to an amateur MMA fight in Topeka where we got to sit, me and the girl I was dating at the time, like third row, because it was a little bit cheaper because it's not UFC. But yeah, I've had some times in Topeka, but love Kansas either way and rock chalk.
Yeah, man. Let's go, man. Shout out Kansas, man, for sure. So, man, with that being said, man, let's get right into it, man. We're going to save kind of the JJ stuff for a little bit. Speaking of Kansas, I just kind of want to talk about one of the UDFAs because, I've heard you kind of speak on him in the past when we brought him on in Logan. Yeah. And I mean, like, what's your overall thought about it? Do you think he has a chance, first of all, to make the 53-man roster? And if he does he have a chance to actually make an impact on this team if something was to go wrong?
I'll go further. He will make the roster.
Okay.
To me, I'll put that at 96%. The team needs offensive line depth. And in my opinion, Logan Brown, now, of course, a little biased with Rock Chalk, but I also got to see Logan Brown every game he played live last year because I don't miss a Kansas game. And then, of course, watch his cut-ups. That's a former 5-star recruit, right, who went to Wisconsin. And last year he was tremendous starting for Kansas. Started on the right side, but that's a guy I think can be a swing guy, NFL level. I think he can hang on the outside, but I also think there's some utility potentially there as a guard convert as well. But yeah, he has the length, he has the athleticism, he has the pedigree. And that's a guy, honestly, I believe 100% he would have been drafted were it not for the incident that led to him leaving Wisconsin. He got in a fight at practice and then he got kicked off the team. That was his second to last year. And then, of course, he went to Kansas and was great last year. I didn't hear any other off the field stuff with him. So I would definitely expect him to hang.
Oh, wow, man. That's another I didn't know that about. I did read that he went to Wisconsin and got into something. I wasn't really too sure what it was exactly, but okay. So he was out there fighting. See, I like a little feisty person on the team, man. To be honest, I don't got no problem with it.
I mean, like people who watch Devin Neal film, Devin Neal was a 6th-round pick of the Saints. You watch him running, and when you watch when he's running behind Brown, that guy's a mauler. And he's playing till the whistle. The thing with him on the edge is just the technique and the footwork against NFL speed is the one thing that I'm curious about, but he has that athletic profile. He has the length and I like the depth he gets, like he has a good setup. So I'm not going to put it past him at all. Like I said, if nothing else, a depth piece at tackle. But yeah, his game also might project better to guard. I think they'll find that out in camp. But either way, you look at the backup offensive lineman projected for the Vikings, I would put him above multiple of those contenders in just in terms of the skill set we have with the overall talent.
Wow, man. Shoot, man. See, and like this, and real quick, Thor, this is why I'm excited to have you on, because the way you go into detail, you do this for a living too. So yeah, you do this for a living, right? This is what
I do. Yeah.
You know what I mean? You could tell too. See, like me, you know, you're perfect for the guys like me that I wouldn't say I'm a casual fan, only because like I played football, you know, until I graduated high school from when I was 5. And then, you know, on Sundays I'm locked in. But, you know, and I do a little bit of homework, but to have you on and be able to really go into detail about why you like the player, I mean, and why you believe the player is going to be successful, that just brings a lot of value to my channel, only because like I'm the type of guy that kind of sit there. I like the guy. I'm going to kind of just give my opinion, to where you bring kind of more facts to the table, which is something that I'm super interested in, man. So, you know, again, this is another reason why I'm glad you on too, man, because there's a couple players that we going to get on for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I mean, like you know, and for people that don't know, like I do, like, you know, the show on Score North on Thursdays,
yeah.
and then stuff with K-Fan, but that's on the side. My full-time job for decade now has been NFL draft work, you know, at first at NBC and then Fantasy Pros, and now currently Fantasy Life, Matthew Berry's company. But it's something I've been obsessed with since I was a kid. Mm-hmm. You know, I was the kid in high school, like doing mock drafts during class. I got in trouble for it one time. In fact, funny story. When I think this was my junior year of high school. But what I would love to do in the springs when I got the NFL draft magazines, the preview ones, I bring them into class, and then I position my books, you know, so you just get a window down onto the magazine, right? But it's like you have your class books out, and then I just be reading the draft magazines or doing mock drafts during class. And one time the history teacher, I got caught. He came up and caught me red-handed, like pulled up the book, and he's like, "I need to see you after class." And I was like, you know, he had me. So, you know, he's like, you know, I see him after class, and he's like, I saw those magazines you were reading, you know, you're not really paying attention in class. He said, "I'll make a deal with you." He said, "If you get an A on the next test," he said, "you can do whatever you want in my class. I'll never bring this up again." He said, "If you don't get an A, we have a problem here, and I'm going to be keeping my eye on you the rest of the semester." I got a 98 on that test.
Let's go.
That was it. I got to read. I didn't even have to hide him in his classroom after that. I just had him straight up. You know, let's go.
That was draft class. Let's go. Hey, for sure. Somebody said the framing. Hey, Thor, back your camera up a little bit. I think they're showing. Yeah. I think they're showing that you're like right. Your face is like right in there. All right, that's better. Yeah, that looks better. There we go.
Yeah.
There we go. That's a lot better. There we go.
Okay.
Let's go. All right. So hey, that's a crazy story, man. You know, and look, it was destined to be, man. You know, you knew you were gonna be this as a youngin', man, for sure. And I'll say this, I'm glad you're on our team. What I mean by that is I'm glad that you represent the Minnesota Vikings, and that's who you really, you know, you put a lot of energy in, although you talk about everybody and you got to do your work, you know, but you focus on the Vikings and you let us know what's really going on, man. Give us some optimism throughout this draft season, man, which I still consider right now is it still kind of in that phase? I feel like it's still in that phase because you're still trying to like see what these players are going to be. Nothing's really absolute yet at the moment. So, I mean, this is a time for you right now too, where is it hard to judge like OTAs? Do you go to training camp like to look at these players as well, or do you kind of just do everything from the house?
Yeah, you know, in the past I haven't. I might go to camp this year. A little bit more because of the new quarterback. I want to see him up
Let's
close.
Go.
Yeah, but you know, like usually just you know, what do you say, remote or whatever. Like I'll go to Gopher games on Saturdays sometimes, but behind me on the other side of the brick fireplace that you guys can see behind me, I have my 3 TVs set up, and so like during college football Saturdays, you know, I got all the games on, and then, you know, of course, NFL as well. But, you know, the way with my full-time job, you know, it's college football and then the draft. So, you know, the way that I see it is I'm still allowed to be a Vikings fan. That's not my full-time. I don't cover the NFL. And so, you know, the Vikings are the one team that I follow very, very closely. And yeah, I mean, you could say, you know, Yeah, I mean that's where the passion comes from because I've been a Vikings fan from the jump. I don't think it sometimes Packer fans they'll try to be like, oh, you're biased for the Vikings, but I don't think I am. I gave the Vikings I think a D grade this year for their draft. I call like
I was gonna touch on that, Thor. I had that in my notes. Can you explain that? Because I heard what you said too about it. But just for in case there's somebody in the building that doesn't understand why you gave them that grade, can you like touch on that and why you gave the Vikings a D?
Yeah, so I just haven't been an NFL draft fan since I was a kid. I love draft grades.
Yeah.
Right. And so like I was the kid who was like after the draft, when we finally got the internet, then I'd be refreshing for Mel Kiper's grades that night. And I've always just loved it. I did have a nitpick with the way that draft grades were done. It always annoyed me that you read a draft grade column and the lowest grade that you see is a B minus. Maybe you see A, C plus, but you didn't see people going beneath that. And my thought is, if your lowest grade, let's say it's a C plus, shouldn't that be an F, right? And why aren't you using sort of the full, A, B, C, D, F, so you can actually show your opinion on each of the 32 teams draft class? This is my full-time job. I have opinions on the classes coming out of the draft, right? Like right away when it's done. Is that going to be, am I going to be 100% right on every class? No, but to me, it's important to show the audience what I actually think of those classes. And I try to have as objective an approach to that as I can. I start off by running an ROI formula. Basically, each team, what was the value of the picks that you used, right? Mm-hmm. So you can think of this like going to the market. How much money did you have? How much money did you spend at the market? That's the amount of draft equity that you use in that draft against the players that you acquired. So what did you bring back from the market? And I judge that based on, you have like a trade chart of like pick values. Uh-huh. And then I do a corresponding on my draft board, those point values, the one guy, the two guy, the three guy, same sort of thing. And so that's how I sort of get the values. And then I run an ROI formula. And then it's curve grading after that, or however you say it, was it bell curve or whatever the thing is, where I give out every year, I give out 2 A pluses, I give out 2 Fs, and then all the other grade, the other 28, they're evenly distributed between there. And the ROI is a decent part of it. And then the other stuff is where I come in, did you hit your needs? How did you do in your trades? Situational stuff like that in the draft, but that's how I sort of do it. And then I basically will rank them 1 to 32. Top 2 ranked teams are getting an A plus, bottom 2 are getting an F, and then in between. How did the Vikings get a D? Because they rank like in my methodology, they were like 7th, they were like 26th or something, 27th.
Gotcha.
However, a part of that couldn't have been avoided. Like I'm grading every team in a vacuum, right? That's what I have to do for my job, but it's not specific to each team's situation of just a vacuum of the Vikings, right? Because if I start doing it like that, you're going to start giving every team the benefit of the doubt, but I can give the benefit of the doubt in my analysis. And what that is for the Vikings is you punted a part of your draft this year in April in order to acquire Dallas Turner, right? Mm-hmm. You several of those picks were traded. And so you had the first round pick, but you were pick poor outside of that. You had the late 3rd round pick, the comp pick, and then you had 2 5th rounders heading into the draft. So you only had those 4 picks, the least in the NFL. And I think it was the second least equity heading into the draft, or the least. And then I think they ended the second least because the Rams traded out of round 1. But anyhow, the situation the Vikings got in the draft, they wanted an interior guy on one side of the line or the other. And because of the way that this draft went, you had the 3 premier offensive tackles were all gone in the top 9. The Saints took the last one at 9. Then when Tyler Booker goes at 12, I believe, to Dallas, now all of a sudden the offensive lineman's starting to get picked off. When Gray Zabel went to Seattle, Donovan Jackson was the last for surefire immediate starter offensive lineman that you could take and comfortably plug into your lineup right away. Meanwhile, on the interior defensive line, Derek Harmon was the last one that went, where those guys were all the surefire guys that I think the Vikings would have considered with their selection. Walter Nolan was long gone. Shamar Stewart was gone, et cetera, et cetera. So because of that, the Vikings were in a position of, sure, you could have traded down. That was something that we talked about in advance of the draft. And they had opportunities, right? The pick after them was traded, and then the pick 2 after them was traded. But the problem is, if you wanted the immediate starter, you didn't have a choice but to stick and pick on Donovan Jackson. He was the last guy available that you knew for sure is going to start next year. So you sort of got boxed into that because of circumstances, right? Like, you think about it like this, the trade that, who was it? It was Jackson, the Jackson Dart trade right behind them. And then 2 behind them was Atlanta trading their first round pick next year, to the Rams so they could move up and get the Brian Burns kid, James Pierce.
Yeah.
And so you could have had access to one of those, but let's say the Jackson Dart one, because I heard some people being, sort of bitching and moaning of like, it was a good value on the trade. Why didn't they take that? Well, you don't take that because if you take that, the team right behind you, Houston, is going to take Donovan Jackson. We believe that that Houston bailed out of that pick immediately because Donovan Jackson was off the board. We believe that Houston was going to select Donovan Jackson because Houston was in the same spot the Vikings were. We want to turn around our interior offensive line. We want to help out our interior offensive line. But once Donovan Jackson's gone, you have this enormous drop to the next guy. So that's why Houston ended up bailing out of their pick. And, if you're going to argue that Kwesi should have traded down, you have to understand that you are simultaneously making the argument that the Vikings leave that draft without a starter for the 2025 roster when we all think that they're going to be contenders. You could certainly make that argument, but you have to make it on both sides, right? You can't have your cake and eat it too with it. So I wasn't down on that pick. Ty Felton, I was a little bit lower on. However, there's a couple things. If he fixes, he's going to be a good long-term starter. I acknowledge that in my scouting report. It's just the Vikings are clearly a bit more bullish that they'll be able to get there with it. And those things are play strength, release package, because if he can't improve the play strength, he simply has to improve his release package, which is fairly rudimentary right now. It didn't really matter in college, but he's going to get mugged at the line by long press cover corners in the NFL if that doesn't improve. And he's one of those guys. It's like when people get their hands on Ty Felton coming off the line, it's like the engine stalling, then it has to restart. So they jar him and then it's like, okay, boom. And then he has to sort of restart. And then he can get funneled that way where the defensive back can sort of funnel him off the line where he wants him. Typically, you want the inside leverage there. So, you're pressing him towards the sidelines or whatever, depending on the concept, of course. But it's that thing. And then last thing is ball skills. And to me, just like with the release package, this also goes with the play strength. Because a lot of times when Ty Felton's open, his ball skills are good. He don't drop the ball. You notice that the ball skills come and go when he is crowded at the catch point. And to me, that goes back to the play strength thing. When he gets jostled, but there's no call, right? Or both of the guys are going for the ball, but there's some contact. It's the same sort of thing. It's like the jolt there. It's like he loses concentration or something, glitches there. So those are the things to work on. And I wonder, again, like if he can't improve the play strength with the ball skills, can McCardle work on him with body positioning or other things to sort of work around that in the same way of we're going to work around the lack of play strength off the line by diversifying your footwork getting off the line, right? Yeah. So it's like 3-card Monty. You just don't want the defensive back to know where am I going, right? Because then he can start off. Now he gets to dictate the dance. So those are the things with Ty Felton. And then the 2 later on guys, I like the Kobe King pick. I think he's probably going to stick. Bartholomew, I was a little bit lower on, but he was a weird evaluation because previous to last year, Pittsburgh did not have a good offense. So it was a passing offense in particular. So it's hard to sort of gauge some of those guys. And then last year it got better, but the way that they used Bartholomew in their offense, it was quick sort of paper cut type concepts. They didn't send him down the field. So it's hard to know exactly what you're getting, beyond a guy, catching the ball within 6 yards of the line of scrimmage, just because of that. So there was a couple of tight ends on the board. I probably would have preferred a little bit more, but that's how the Vikings ended up, in my ROI metrics, just a little bit below. But I don't argue with the overall class too much, just knowing the context of it, of Dallas Turner was acquired in part, putting yourself in this situation with this draft.
Right. How'd you feel like overall about the Sam Howell transaction too during that? Did you think that was a smart move from the Minnesota Vikings, just kind of solidifying that QB2 spot?
Yeah, that one was super clever because Kwesi, it was, I believe, I think it was the first 5th round pick. I think he traded down, trying to see, I don't have it right in front of me, but he traded down with Seattle, I believe, dropped roughly 30 slots. And that's how they acquired Howell. And then I think they traded the pick that they got back from Seattle for the 2 picks that were right in a row. So basically you traded the 5th round pick for Sam Howell and what would that have been? 2 late 6th, I guess, right? And King and Bartholomew. So that's a transaction you're going to make every day of the week. The cost is almost, as long as Howell stays on the roster, the cost almost justifies itself because Sam Howell this year, I don't have a salary in front of me, but $1 million, $1.5 million, something like that.
Yeah.
That they were going to pay Daniel Jones, what was it, 12, 14 for this year? That's a $13 million savings, which, by the way, has already been reinvested back into the roster, right? That Daniel Jones money, that was already spent. But the idea being that you were going to go cheap with the backup quarterback thing. So because of that transaction, you're able to add another starter elsewhere, whoever you want to point, whether you want to say that's Hargrave or, whoever you want to say it. Some of those transactions wouldn't have been possible if they had signed the expensive QB2. So you save all that money that you're able to sign another starter elsewhere. And then you still acquire 2 picks. You still split the thing and got the 2 picks. That's just good business anyway you slice it.
Yeah, no, facts. I have to read a tweet that you put out, and this was on, May 20. You didn't know I was going to do this, but I got a couple, but this one here, I just want you to touch on it, right?
Okay.
You said, this is everybody in the chat, this is Thor on May 20th, 2025. He said, every day I step outside, I get my feet on the grass, look up at the blue sky to reflect on how the Vikings basically traded Ed Ingram for Jordan Mason. Explain that to me, Thor. I need to know, man. That's interesting.
Oh, this was it was another just slick piece of business by Kwesi, who people nitpick his drafting, but the sort of the Moneyball Wall Street stuff he has done with free agency and trades, I like. Yeah. Barring the first trade he made, in that very first draft when he traded down, but the first draft notwithstanding is always sort of the caveat you got to give there. But this was just another really slick piece of business. We all thought the Vikings were going to release Ed Ingram. Yeah. And if a trade had not materialized, I'm pretty sure they would have released Ed Ingram. They didn't want him back on the roster. But you basically took advantage of a team that was utterly desperate for interior line play in Houston, the team we just talked about that wanted Donovan Jackson, right? You had sort of there was, parallels, with these situations there. But they end up Nick Caserio, who up and down Nick Caserio and his tenure there, you're able to talk him into, hey, just kick us a 6th round pick and you get this 2nd rounder from a couple of years who's played so much. He has all this experience and your guys' guards stink. So take this low cost flyer on Ed Ingram. They're able to talk Caserio into this. So you get a free 6th round pick and then they basically send that out for Jordan Mason. You basically acquired Jordan, in my opinion, for free. Because in my opinion, Ed Ingram was already a sunk cost that was going to be released. And instead, lo and behold, through 2 transactions, you turned him into Jordan Mason. It's just incredibly slick. The price on Jordan Mason was a 6th round pick. So it's just another example of Kwesi just doing slick work with the transactions.
Yeah, no, man, I'm super excited. I think most of the Vikings community, at least that I've talked to and come across, are super excited about the Jordan Mason pickup. I think it's going to take our run game to another level from last year. Yeah, especially him and Aaron Jones together. I think that's a really good pair, man, in that backfield, man. I'm excited, and we need that for JJ McCarthy. You know, because I think the run game still has to help him. Although, you know, I think JJ has all the bells and whistles. And I want to talk about something you said on this is actually something you did on Purple Daily where you said, hey, morons, just literally watch the game. All right. JJ McCarthy. And I had that. It's funny, Thor, like, I'll say a couple weeks ago after you did this episode, because I tend to tap in when you're on, man. You know, I'm a huge fan of you for sure.
Appreciate
it. When you said the howitzer, I had to ask my chat. I'm like, what the hell is? I didn't even know what the hell that was. I was like, what the hell is a howitzer? You know what I'm saying? But I was like, when you started explaining it and saying, you know, he's able to, you know, so we're gonna get into the JJ thing right now because that's what I'm super excited about because I don't know if you know, I'm a Michigan fan. So I've been supporting JJ McCarthy his whole time at Michigan. And he was my number 2 quarterback that I wanted. You know, I wanted Jaden Daniels. He was my number 1. But, you know, I told everybody, hey, look, if we get JJ McCarthy, that would be a dream come true only because that's the college team I really follow. And for my college quarterback to come to my NFL team, I mean, can't ask for anything better than that. You know what I'm saying? And you came out on the front lines. I mean, going into that draft season and like really just stepped out on the ledge. And I know you feel like it's not that big of a deal because you trust the player, like you did your homework and you see what you see. But a lot of people are like, yo, this guy's going out on the ledge, like talking JJ McCarthy up, man. He better calm down, man, because he hasn't thrown the ball a lot. He doesn't this. He only hands it all, you know, just a bunch of bullshit narratives. You know what I mean? Excuse my language. But I want you to touch on because and Colin Cowturd just came on too. Everybody's in the chat asking you to touch on that too. And I seen you post something about that, about how JJ doesn't have the wow factor. He doesn't have the arm strength. His balls die. You know, can you just go on matter of fact, just go on a JJ tangent right now about why you believe he's going to be what the Vikings need, man. He's going to bring us that Super Bowl, man. He brings everything to the table. I want to hear it.
Yeah, this goes back to the bullshit narratives coming out of his last, his true junior season at Michigan going into that draft process. And I think that those were vestiges from scouting reports from the year before, bad ones. Yeah. In particular, the stuff of like the stuff that Coward was saying, the weak arm. He just invented the lack of mobility thing. I don't even know where that's not a thing. I think he just tacked that on. But the weak arm thing, that was sort of the prevailing thought of, in my industry of JJ heading into that thing. Well, why was it different with me? Because Michigan in 2023, I watched dang near every one of their games live. And the reason why is because I thought in the preseason, I cover college football in the falls. My prediction was Michigan was going to win the national title that year. And I have plenty of bets to that effect of Michigan winning the title, winning the Big Ten, making the playoff, going undefeated, et cetera, et cetera. And so as we got into November, all of a sudden I'm looking like, man, I have a lot riding on Michigan down the stretch here. So I was watching every game and there was multiple of them where I was expecting the other shoe to drop, especially the Alabama game once you got into the semis. But there was games there where without McCarthy, they would have been run off the field. And the Alabama game is a great example of this. But some of those other games where in the stats, people nitpicking his stats, what they don't realize is JJ McCarthy played the hardest strength of schedule that year of any of those quarterbacks. And his statistical profile, it was leveraged on the high leverage downs, right? Mm-hmm. Like a much bigger percentage of his throws were coming on 3rd and long and these sorts of things because of the constitution of that Michigan offense. And people try to pretend like, oh, their running game was so awesome and stuff like this. Take a look at Blake Corum's stats that year. Blake Corum was not good that year. He was injured. He was coming off of an injury. Their offensive line, the top guy who has gotten drafted on that offensive line so far, I think is like 5th round or 6th round. Like it wasn't like they had the greatest offensive line of all time either. They obviously they had a really good defense that year, of course. But Harbaugh, that's his philosophy. It's run on the early downs, and then he needs his quarterbacks to convert the money downs. Well, that is most indicative of when you're projecting forward, you're thinking about a guy from an NFL perspective. I could care less about on 1st down you throwing a bubble screen, right, or the RPO nonsense, or like some of that different stuff. What I care about is when the defense knows what's coming, which is 3rd and 5 or above. They know a pass is coming. Who can still beat the defense, right? In what scenarios can the defense still not stop it? And that was McCarthy. He was the best quarterback in the high leverage spots, again, against the best opponents. So, I just seen it live. That's what a top 10 pick looks like. He beat Ohio State. He beat Penn State. He beat Iowa. He beat Alabama. Then he goes and beats Washington. He had a whole bunch of top 15 defenses in there that he was playing flawless football against. He only threw one interception after mid-September of that year in this gauntlet. And the surrounding circumstances as well just raised the degree of difficulty that much more, which was the NCAA was gunning for Jim Harbaugh all year. They suspended him the first 3 games. So you had the interim coaches and stuff. Then there was the Connor Stallion stuff. So they suspended Harbaugh for 3 more games in the middle of the season. The whole thing was a freaking circus. It was a media circus the whole time. And that team easily could have fallen apart. And with the interim coaches and the media scrutiny and everyone calling them cheaters and all this different stuff. And it didn't. And a big part of that is JJ McCarthy sort of leading the ship through. People that say, oh, he's a cheater, there's only one team in the nation that we know for sure was not cheating down the stretch in 2023 when Michigan won the national title when JJ was 20 years old. And that's the Michigan Wolverines, because all eyes were on them and they were under an active investigation, right? Connor Stallions had been ejected from the building. The NCAA was looking into the text messages, into the computers. Only one team, can we say for sure, was not cheating. And during that time, again, Penn State, Iowa, Ohio State, Alabama, Washington, bang, 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 bang. It was flawless. He wasn't making mistakes, and he obviously led Michigan to the title. And then you see the athletic profile and the measurables, in the pre-draft process, right? He didn't get to run the 40 because his hamstring was tight. But I have reliable reports that he was running in the high 4.4s at Michigan. The thing he could do at the NFL Combine was run the 3-cone. He had the 6th fastest 3-cone, irregardless of position, at the 2024 Combine. And then he had the max velo throw that was 1 mile per hour off the record. And that's clear as day when you watch his film. That's why I can tell you with 100% certainty, Colin Cowherd has never watched him play, because it jumps off the screen. The velocity that he throws with, that was the least surprising result ever, that he was 1 mile per hour beneath that. Like his fastballs, intermediate or the hole shots down the sidelines, heat ring balls, they'll singe your facial hair off if they come by your face. I mean, that kid, he has a big league fastball, 100 mile per hour fastball. So, and that's why he's so good in the intermediate. Because he can fit those balls in before the defender can get downhill. But yeah, lots of rotten narratives about JJ. And the only reason I knew is because I was watching it live. That's how I could say it coming right out of the season.
Yeah, man. I'm super. Listen, when we drafted him, man, just the whole process, I'm a big believer in. I just think he's a leader. Just watching how he commands the team out there, man. Like he just takes control, man. And that's kind of what I've always wanted in a quarterback. Like even looking at Kirk Cousins, I'm just like, yo, like this dude, man. I just can't believe, man. I can't jump on board. I don't know why. It was just one of those things. And when we got JJ McCarthy, it just was a breath of fresh air, because I knew for a fact, and we're hearing it now too. Like all the teammates are coming out now and just saying how he's taking control. I think Jordan Addison just did a interview 2 days ago and was saying, JJ McCarthy taking control. Like it's his team. Like they're handing him the team. They're handing him the keys. That says a lot, because he is a young guy. I think he's the youngest. Is he the youngest quarterback? I think I seen you tweet something about that. He's the youngest starting quarterback in the NFL.
Youngest projected starting quarterback for 2025 by 10 full months.
Yeah.
And the next guy, that's the first overall pick from this April, Cam Ward. JJ McCarthy is 10 months younger than the first overall pick. Cam Ward is only the first overall pick because JJ declared the year before. That would
because JJ would have been that. Back. JJ would have been a
exactly.
Titan right now.
Yep.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, unfortunately. Yeah.
And that wouldn't have been good, man. We need our boy, man. So like speaking on last year, right? The preseason game, I'm sure you felt really good after that preseason game.
Oh, yeah.
I did. Because watching that shit, man, I was ready to go online and just start going at everybody who, I don't care if it was a preseason game, boy, I was on them. I'm like, yeah, what you got to say now? I know it's a preseason game, but still yet, I always tell people were like, it's a preseason game. He was playing against 2s and 3. I'm like, yes, but he looked like the best player on the field, though. Like he did exactly what he was supposed to do. He did make that early mistake, but the way he bounced back from that interception and, and even in his post game, like him knowing like, yeah, I did that and I just kind of flushed it And that's what you want to hear, first of all. And then that's what you want to see too, what he did, the way he bounced back in that preseason game. I mean, like after that, man, I was like, yo, I say that to say, did you think there was a chance he was going to actually be QB1 if the injury didn't happen? Do you think he was going to start or had a chance to start?
I think if alternate reality where he doesn't get hurt, I think that there was a better shot at that than the team wants to let on. Or certainly, last year when Sam was still on the roster, that you notice with the Vikings quotes, if anything regarding Sam, they do a pretty good job of respect, and stuff like that. And after the fact, they're not going to say, oh, if JJ hadn't gotten hurt, he would have been the starter, because it's kind of disrespectful to Sam, right? But you go back to the quotes at the time. I believe Kevin O'Connell, I believe his direct quote was JJ was nipping at Sam's heels, and JJ was starting to get more first team reps. He certainly outplayed him in that game. Now, there was still a lot of time to go, right? I mean, there was 2 more preseason games to come. There was a lot of practices to go. Not 100%. It might have been a thing where Sam started. Here's what I can say for sure. What was the first game where Sam was really struggling? There was a couple games where the Jaguars game for sure, but there was one earlier where.
Yeah. So
the Jets,
the Giants, the Jets. We played the Jets across the pond, right?
Yeah.
I believe we played the Jets across the pond. I'm trying to remember, man. I don't really know. I don't really know which game. If somebody knows in the chat, drop it in the chat. But yeah, I can't remember. But I do remember him struggling. A couple. Man, even we know the last 2 games were horrible.
For sure.
I mean, I think that's what sealed the deal for real about not even thinking about bringing him back. Honestly.
Yeah, and I think what would have ended up happening is Sam would have gotten the hook the first game he was in the tank, right?
Yeah.
And so, Sam was able to work through his stuff, and then obviously...
Oh, they said the Titans game, Thor. The
Titans, yeah, where they're just sort of flubbing around stuff.
Yeah.
I think he would have gotten the hook there if he did start out the season. But, yeah, I mean, like, JJ, it sucked with the injury, but you took, the surgery that they elected, that's the meniscus surgery where there's not long-term side effects. You get back to 100%. The one where you can return after 6 weeks, that's the scary one. That's the one like Derrick Rose did a bunch because they have to remove cartilage from the knee, and that's where it opens the door for degenerative issues. But the Vikings did the smart thing and elected the longer recovery time so that the structure of the knee remained intact, and we have much better progressions with that. But yeah, like watching that game, man, I was jacked. It's like you can be confident in your read, like with what I do, with the prospects, and this is not, of course, the first time that I've been out on a limb. It happens every process with this prospect or that prospect. But with him being in Minnesota now, and then that being the first preseason game, yeah, I was on the edge of my seat, just wanted to see, is it going to translate like I saw in my head. Right. And you mentioned the early interception. It reminded me so much of the semis game against Alabama. People forget this because it didn't
first throw, right? You almost
first throw. Yeah, because it didn't end up on the stat sheet. So this play was forgotten. But yeah, the first throw, JJ was throwing towards, I believe, the right sideline.
He was. Yeah.
Yeah. And it was a weird play because the dude was, I forget who the receiver was, or if it was Loveland, maybe, I forget. But there was someone who was like closer to him where it was open earlier. And then there was a guy who was a little bit deeper down the sideline. And JJ sort of ends up, it was sort of like almost between the 2 guys. He should have thrown it to the underneath guy right away. Yeah. And I think he knows that. And I forgot if his explanation was that he was trying to throw it away or if it was just errant. But anyway, this Alabama sideline defender on the sideline ends up picking this off. And so it was like, oh my God. But it turns out on replay, the dude's foot was on the chalk. And so it just turned out to be an incomplete pass. And JJ from there settled down. And it was the same thing with the Raiders game. Now that interception, of course, stood. But you mentioned his response right after the game when they asked him about that. And his quote was something like, it was a blessing because it allowed me, gave me adversity to have to overcome. Yeah. And that's the way that he sees, life in general, right? With his philosophy and his mindset. And it's a beautiful thing, right? Like, you come out against Alabama, it's the biggest game of your life. You're in the Rose Bowl. Everyone is watching, right? It's a packed house. and you throw that thing that should have been a pick right away. There's going to be quarterbacks where it's difficult for them to get over that. Maybe it sends them into the tank for the whole game. He was over that thing the next play. Maybe we got to do something, the first plays of the game. Maybe that's, talked, because he gets juiced up. This is a hockey player. He was a hockey player when he was a kid. Yep. Yeah. I mean, he's one of the guys. And so, I think maybe you see him get a little bit juiced coming out, and stuff like that. But yeah, I love the way that he consistently bounces back from adversity in games.
And I'll say with that preseason game, we really got a feel of him being able to make almost every type of throw too. I mean, he was outside the numbers. He was deep, he was underneath. I mean, he made out of those 11, I think he was 11 for 17, if I'm not mistaken. But like out of those 11 throws, I mean, out of those 17 throws, really, we got to see a lot of good things and him being able to read defenses and move around in the pocket. I mean, there was time where I remember him spinning out of the pocket and getting away from pressure and I think he picked up the first down with that play. I mean, and in that play where he got literally smacked in the mouth and still was able to complete the pass. I believe it was to Naylor, if I'm not mistaken, or maybe it was Tristan Jackson, but it was a throw on the left side of the field. And I'm like, yo, that
one was Jackson. The long touchdown down the left sideline. Yeah, that one was Jackson.
Yeah, but no, I'm talking about the one. Did you see remember the one where there was a blitzer coming in and he got hit? I mean, he got smacked in the mouth, but he was able to get the ball off, and it was for a first down. But it was, man, I'm telling you, man, like when I was watching the game, I'm like, yo, I really felt like we finally got our guy. And I will say, when the injury thing came out, man, it broke my heart, man, as a Vikings fan, as a JJ fan, because I was looking forward to seeing him compete to be that starter. I don't want to take anything away from Sam Darnold. I think Sam Darnold, he didn't really owe us anything. I always say, like, Sam Darnold owed us nothing, man. He came in, we won 14 football games. It was fun rooting for the Vikings. We're able to see what we have, last year. We can kind of get a gauge of, okay, now what will it look like if we put in a guy like JJ McCarthy? And if you ask me, man, I think it's going to be amazing. I want to ask you this, Thor. Do you think that JJ, like having to sit out last year, do you think it's going to affect him at all? Like, do you see anything changing, or do you still have the same projection? Like, hey, man, look, he was able to, because I'm a big fan of, I say this, I tell the people in the community, I think it wasn't a wasted year, first of all. He was able to get all the mental things down. So now that he's out there practicing, when he's hearing verbiage, it's automatic now. You know what I mean? So, I mean, do you feel like it's going to affect him at all in 2025, having to sit out?
I feel that he still improved even with the year off. They talked about the VR training that he did, and this is not something that people should poo-poo. It's a new technology, but we have already seen instances where it has greatly improved a quarterback's ability to read the field. And the famous example is Jaden Daniels, who when Jaden Daniels was leaving Arizona State, his football career, you were, what's it, the doomsday clock? Like the doomsday clock on Jaden Daniels' career was getting really close to midnight because he couldn't read the field. At the end, he had great physical ability. Same physical ability made him the number 2 overall pick. He had that back at Arizona State. It was why he was like the face of the program for Herm Edwards and stuff like that. But by his third season, I think he had an even TD-INT ratio. I don't have it in front of me, but from memory, it was like 11-11 or 13-13. And he ends up leaving Arizona State. He goes to LSU, and people thought that Garrett Nussmeier was going to win that starting job because of how bad Daniels had been his last season at Arizona State. But Daniels got in with the VR training that they do there. And they said by the time he leaves LSU, they're running it on fast forward, double speed. And he was still denoting what is the coverage look? Where's the blitzer coming from? First read, nope. Second read, what read do I end up going to? And he has mentioned how much that improved his game. So, I think that helps McCarthy win through that. The general one, also the helmet cam from Darnold in practice. Yeah. So JJ would be watching the practice, and then later on he could go in and get literally in the headset and see what Sam was seeing. And then the other stuff that the teammates and other people with the team have brought up. Harrison Phillips mentioned that it was a couple of days after his injury, he goes up to him, is like, can we start having meetings? I want to pick your brain about defensive football. And
Cam Bynum too. He did it. Cam Bynum.
Yep. Yeah. Like using, your teammates as these resources, right. And not wasting your time, using that time that you had off the field to try to improve your understanding of the game you're going in. And then I was so impressed, but not surprised at all, about the thing of him writing the individual scouting reports on all the defenders that the Vikings were playing.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, I mean, this is a gym rat kid that's difficult to get out of the building. And he did plenty of work that offseason. He referred to himself as the caged animal climbing uphill that year when he was rehabbing. But from all indications, he put in all the work, and all the veterans wildly impressed. And I think you're going to see that pay off this year.
Let's go, man. Let's go. We got some real good JJ talk from Thor, man. Another thing is I want you to touch on the defense really quick. We're going on 46 minutes, man. I'm gonna hold you for about 15 more minutes, man.
Sure.
I want to ask you about the defense, like as far as us, first of all, is there any position group that you think we may need to make one more addition to make sure we're in a good spot? Or do you think we're good like we are? I mean, just all around, man, how are you feeling about the defense and where we kind of sit right now? I know people in the chat are talking about it. They want to hear you talk about some of the expectations going into the season with the defense we got now.
Only thing for me is I would like to have one more cornerback.
Okay.
And do I think this is an emergency? No, I wouldn't put it like that. But if you don't get another cornerback, you're putting a lot of faith in either Blackman or Okudah all of a sudden breaking out when he has stunk to this point. I loved him coming out of Ohio State, but he has not been good in the NFL to this point. One of those different things, right? I think the cornerback room, it looks like the contending sort of thing that your roster is if you add another guy, right? If you added whether it's Asante Samuel or whether it's Jair Alexander or right. I mean,
who do you think would be the best fit out of those guys? Jalen Ramsey, between Jalen Ramsey, Jack Jones, because here's some names I want you, and if we can get either one, which one would you go with? Jack Jones, Jalen Ramsey, Jair Alexander, or Asante Samuels? Those four guys.
It would depend on the price with Ramsey.
Okay.
That one's because of that, and I know the money went down after June 1st. I would have to look at, is that feasible with the cap hit you're going to have to take, and how much of it would Miami take, and then obviously what are they asking back in return? That would be a fun one though, because we know that he is scheme versatile. That one with Flores would be really cool, and then any depreciation with his athleticism. You could see a sort of progression like we saw with Charles Woodson, late career safety. Charles Woodson. Yeah. Charles Woodson, he was awesome at well into his 30s because it, started to play more safety and move him around and stuff like that. I think you could see that with Jalen Ramsey. And if the price is too prohibitive there, for me, either Samuel or Jair. Jair does well. I was going to say, you have the pressing, the injury thing with Samuel. That they were looking into that issue that he said he's had for a long time. Yeah. Jair, obviously the last 2 years, he's had injury, been nicked up and stuff like that. So that would probably require their medical teams to sign off on one of those two guys. But assuming, both of them are healthy enough for next year, to me, you sign either of those guys, that any of these three guys, they're immediate starters. Right. And then at that point, you don't have to trust on Blackman coming off injury. He's got to be the starter this year. We don't have anything behind him we like. So if takes him a little bit longer, gets re-injured, anything like that, if there's any struggles, there's any rust, you could be in trouble on one side. You make this signing, not only do you improve your starting lineup, but now your depth, you would feel really good about it. Where I don't know right now if they feel really, really good about their depth at corner.
Yeah, I heard some tidbits the past couple of days. Alec Lewis was talking about is it Vaughn from Utah? Yeah. So they were saying he looks really good at OTAs the past couple of days. It's practice. We always get kind of those updates on certain players that are standing out. But they said he's super long, and kind of is out there, getting it. He got an interception, getting pass breakups, things like that. Is there any of the UDFAs that you feel as far as on the cornerbacks? Because I know we got Vaughn. I believe we have like two of them, but I mean, is there any name? Like, do you think a guy like Vaughn can make the team, or do we absolutely have to go and sign more of a veteran? I mean, I'm more on the veteran side. I just feel like you kind of need that, especially at cornerback, because I'm sick of just trying to bring it. I believe in the young guys, and obviously they need an opportunity, right? I really wanted Kobe Bryant, man, just to say the least. Yeah, I was a Kobe Bryant advocate, bro. What happened there real quick, man? What happened? Why did he not get drafted? I just don't get it, man. Fill me in.
Kobe Bryant, what I was told was he, this was a big talking point with Shadir Sanders, but not the same thing, of course, with Kobe Bryant, but I heard that he didn't acquit himself the best in the interviews.
Okay.
Yeah, and there's just some prospects like that, and that's how you can start losing. When you're in the war room and you're on the clock, you can start losing tiebreakers to other prospects, and that's what I think happened. I think he rubbed some teams the wrong way, and all of a sudden they start looking at other corners, and then all of a sudden the way you're being discussed in those rooms, it's starting to focus more on your negatives than your positives. And with him, he's a skinny kid. And so, I think between those two things, he's going to struggle with play strength and we don't really know once he gets inside the building. But what I do know is the people at Kansas really liked him. Yeah. He was a really, really good starter for multiple years. And I think he should have been drafted. But yeah, as far as Nehemiah Vaughn, I had him. I'm looking at my database from last draft. I had him cornerback 47. 6'2.5", 186, 85th percentile size adjusted athlete. Around the draft, he was a little bit on the older side. Had already turned 23, but you have a decent athletic profile there. 4.45 40 and a 39.5-inch vertical. Obviously, the long arm kid. He's with Vaughn. The year before he was better in 2023 and took a step back last year. And that was part of the reason that I ranked him a little bit lower. However, you have to say this, in his defense or as a contextual thing, the Utah team in general stunk last year. It was like the worst Utah team that we had seen in a long time. And their defense prior to that had been good almost every single year under Kyle Whittingham. And last year they had a whole bunch of injuries. And so I think he got stranded in some bad spots. It wasn't the best film to acquit himself well. And so I think you can make an argument, maybe he ends up falling out of the draft because of some of those things. If he repeated 2023 last season, I think he probably ends up as a late day 3 guy. And the Vikings end up being able to sign him, and there's similarities there with McLaughlin from the year before. That was another big, rangy, long-armed press corner on the outside. Yep. And Vaughn, they appear maybe to have run into another one. So we'll see how he keeps playing once we get back in camp later this summer.
A player I want to pick your brain on real quick with the defense is Jay Ward, right? I hear Kwesi, like he brought him up a couple of weeks ago, maybe a month ago, just at a press conference. And like him coming out of LSU, I know he was kind of versatile. I believe he was playing the nickel and was able to move the safety as well. Yeah. If I'm not mistaken, like, what do you see in Jay? What do you think the team believes in him? Like, is he somebody? Because this is my thing. The reason why I asked this too is because Hitman's coming back, right? Mm-hmm. Now, in my opinion, every Vikings fan, we love him to death, right? But the thing is, I think this needs to be the last ride. I really do. I think this year needs to be the last ride. And I also say, as he's getting older, the body not taken away from his training and keeping up with his health, but the body breaks down, man, even if you don't want it to, right? As you get older and you out there, and it's a physical game. If something was to happen, God forbid, are we putting faith in, and I think that's another reason why I like the Jalen Ramsey pickup too, if we were able to make it happen. But is a guy like Jay Ward, him coming into us drafting him, did you see something in Jay Ward? Was there something exciting about that guy?
I was definitely lower on Jay Ward. I'm going to pull up see if I
can. Because I'm interested, man, because he's kind of like going under the radar. And I'm trying not to forget about him, and Quincy's making sure we don't.
Was that the 2023 draft that he came in?
Yes.
No, I was gonna see if I could find my.
No, I think it might have been no, it was 2024. It should have been the 2024 draft. Let
me see if I can pull it up. But anyway, I mean, like as I'm doing that in general, I saw him as a better possibility that he was a tweener than he would like versatile, right? Because they played him, boundary corner. Then you saw him some deep safety. You mentioned the nickel work. It's like they kept moving him around. I didn't see like a big difference maker at any of those spots, and I started to wonder, like, are they moving him like because he is not excelling at those other positions? And I see, the vision there, right? Like the potential of like, oh, if we can improve this and improve that, then maybe he can be a move. Like I see sort of the idea of him, but I didn't see it on the field at LSU. Like I said, I saw more of a tweener. So I definitely, I don't have it in front of me, but I definitely ranked him beneath where they ended up taking him.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, like for me, I don't know. I wouldn't be trusting Jay Ward on the field this year as a depth piece. And if they released him, to me, that's okay. Like I don't. Yeah, I'm not the biggest fan. Yeah.
All right. So two more questions, Thor, real quick. This is going to be inner predictions. All right. And man, this was a great show, bro. I'm going to go back and rewatch this because there's a lot of information here. Shout out everybody in the chat, man. We appreciate y'all, man. We got 70 people in the building. Make sure you hit the like button, man. Let's support Thor, man, for sure. Because hey, some people say rap finally made it, man. You know, like, hey, I'm official now. I got the boy on. You hear me? And I wanted to let people know too, Thor. Like, some people don't know that you actually supported us at Skull Fest last year. You know, and I appreciate that. And hopefully you can make it this year, man. We got a new location. We're doing it this year, and it's going to be Saturday the 13th. So if you can get out there, man, hey, pop out. You know, you're more than welcome.
Yeah, that was a fun night. You know, I got to meet a lot of folks I'd never met including yourself. You know, people that I knew from Twitter but had never met in person. And yeah, it was a good time with all that, celebrating the Vikings. And if I'm remembering right, I think that night was the night the UFC was at the what is it
Corner
called?
bar.
The Sphere?
Oh yeah, the Sphere. Yep.
Yeah, it was the night they were in the Sphere. So yeah, it was just a bunch of cool stuff going on. It was like sensory overload kind of for me. But yeah, it was a fun time.
Yeah, man. So and I appreciate that. And hopefully we can do a rerun this year, man. If you're in town, man, for
what season opener. Where is it going to be this time?
It's going to be at the Crooked Pint right there on Washington. It's really not. It's right around the corner actually from Corner Bar. It's like right in front of the U.S. Bank, man. Right there.
Nice.
So, yeah, it's called the Crooked Pint right there. So I wanted to ask you, like, prediction wise. First of all, what is your JJ prediction? Because you know you're the face, man. You know what I mean? Like we handing you the crown, man. You know what? Listen, I've been shouting and hollering JJ McCarthy, but like obviously you are solidified in this Vikings community and you carry that crown, and we support you 100%. What is your prediction as far as his stats go? If you want to touch on maybe how many touchdowns you think he'll throw, how many yards you think he'll throw, like what you got for JJ, man?
Well, I think the market and the sports books, they're too low on the Vikings in general because they're too low on JJ McCarthy. They just never seen him before. And so I saw the passing touchdowns came out for him at the sports books. It's 24.5, 25.5, I think. Yeah, over.
Over. Okay.
The passing yards, I forgot where that came in, but that felt light to me as well. I don't really understand the market's pessimism here. We saw what Sam did last year in this offense. Now the surrounding pieces are better. You had a terrible interior offensive line last year. Now you have one of the NFL's best. You already had one of the NFL's best tackle duos. You have one of the greatest wide receivers to ever play the game. On the other side, you have one of the NFL's better wide receiver twos. And then you have one of the NFL's best receiving tight ends. Right. Yeah. So that's what you have. And then obviously the advantageous system that you're in with Kevin O'Connell, one of the great quarterback whisperers we have. I don't really understand, outside of just, these rotten narratives, sort of leading the dance with some of this stuff. You saw the stats that Sam put up last year. And I know that they're going to, the early downs, there's going to be because they fixed that interior offensive line and because they now have the legitimate complement to Aaron Jones and Jordan Mason. There's going to be more of an emphasis on running the ball on early downs, but the offense I think is going to be better, and that's going to provide more opportunities to put up those stats, to score those touchdowns. So I would go over on that stuff. I would fly over on the Vikings 8.5 win total. I think that's a joke. I think it's.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. That was the next question. So go into it. Yeah. What do you got? Where you got us landing this year as far as win total?
Yeah, I mean, the market has the Vikings essentially even with the Chicago Bears. You look at the odds of the first game, the Vikings, I think, are 1.5 or 2.5 point underdogs at Chicago. And then on the back end, I think they're only 2.5 point favorites at home against Chicago, the second one. Then those teams have the identical win total. So that the market and the sports books are telling you Vikings and Bears are even. Yeah. In what reality Like, point me to positions the Bears are better than the Vikings.
Yeah.
And you can include coaching staff in that, by the way. The public loves to dream on the Bears, and a lot of times you go into the season where they're too low on the Vikings, and I think that this is another example of that. But yeah, the Vikings, I believe, are going to be in the playoffs. I think the Vikings are going to win the division. If I had to,
Let's
one team, like you look at the Lions schedule, right? They're the bully in the room or whatever.
Right.
The Lions have lost, obviously, their two coordinators, talked a lot about that. And then the rest of the staff gets greatly shaken up. We know that Dan Campbell, this is the whole thing with him. He's the great motivator, CEO type coach. He doesn't do the X's and O's stuff. It matters losing two really good coordinators there. And we'll have to see the new dudes coming in. But you have that, and then you have the Lions are facing this gauntlet schedule. Take a look at the Lions schedule. It is not easy. You have a bunch of brutal games in there. They can't miss a beat if they want to contend for the division title again. And I think they're going to miss a beat, against the schedule they're playing and with all those new coordinators, et cetera, et cetera. And then the Packers, the Packers certainly better than the Bears, but I'm not too overly first of all, the Packers cornerback room is horrible. You talk about a team that needs to make a transaction for a cornerback. They should have taken one in the draft, but this year, for whatever reason, they decide, this is the year we're going to take the wide receiver, even though this was the worst wide receiver class we had seen 5 or 6 years. So the Packers decide this year we're going to take the wide receiver round 1, but they weren't done yet. 2 rounds later, round 3, they took another wide receiver, and they didn't take a cornerback until like round 7. Anyway, it's a flawed roster. They still don't have a wide receiver 1. They can say Golden is. He's not. Golden, he's going to be a good wide receiver 2 in the NFL. He's going to have to function as a wide receiver 1 for Green Bay, I think. Yeah. But, again, there's flaws on that team. I think the Vikings have the best roster in the division. I think they're the best coach team in the division. I think they're going to win the division. And let's just say I'm not making any plans for the week in Santa Clara. That has been opened up on my schedule.
Let's go.
I will not be putting anything that February week in Santa Clara. So
let's go. Clip it. Thor got us going to the Bolski, man. Let's go. Nah, for sure, man. That's lit, man. Hey, man, Thor, man. Look, I appreciate you so much, first of all, for giving me, your time, man, to come on and talk Vikings football, man. I love it with a passion, man. I love learning, and I feel like today was a learning experience, man, with having you on and just kind of listening to how you break down the players and what we're doing and stuff like that, man. I really value it, man. So everybody, make sure you hit the like button, man, so this video can get out even when we're done and we hop off of here. People can come back and watch it. Thor, I want to show you real quick. This is something that Norse made, man, and we have 4 of these. All right, and we're doing a raffle.
Love it.
All right, Thor made these handmade. I mean, they're 3D too. I know you can't really see it there, but they're actually like 3D wood.
Oh, yeah.
He tweeted, I believe he tweeted you on X. He told me to remind you. He tweeted you on X. So we're doing a raffle. It's $20. If you haven't, Thor, what I asked you is at least retweet it if you can when you get a chance to your following, because you have a huge following. And maybe, so what it is, it's for my father. He's fighting cancer. And he's actually about to ring the bell. So Thor, Thor was like, I say Thor, Norse. Yeah, those names are so similar right now.
Yeah.
Norris was like, man, I want to do something for him, right? And so he went ahead and started making those to do raffles for the community to give away. So I'm going to be giving away 4 of those here in the next couple of weeks. And if it's something you can just share and get the word out there, man, we've actually got a ton of people already tapped in with it, man, and I'm super excited to see who wins, man, because those pieces are one of a kind and they go hard, man. But with that being said, man, hey, Thor, it was a great time, man. Great time on the show, man. You want to leave anybody with anything, man? Like where are you usually posting daily? I know you're on Purple Daily, but what else you got going on?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at ThorKU, and then my draft stuff. We're going to be starting 2026 draft stuff this summer. The too early stuff by position. So we'll start getting into the prospects, start zeroing in on guys, the Vikings for next April. But you can find that on fantasylife.com. Okay. That's Matthew Berry's site, Fantasy Life.
Fantasylife.com. Okay, perfect. And I've seen you on those shows too. Oh yeah, real quick. Man, you cooked Ross, man. Hey, everybody in the chat, man. Hey, he cooked the guy, man. You know what I mean? Representing right. If you haven't seen that episode, go watch that episode. First of all, man, that was a great episode. Thor represented us well, man, because you had a guy that came out and talked out the side of his neck, and then Thor had to really tell him the facts, you know what I mean? And humble him a little bit. So that was a great watch, Thor, man.
I appreciate it. Yeah, I'm happy you have me on it. Anyone want to debate JJ McCarthy? I'm right. You know, it's like the things you see on YouTube where it's like the one person in the middle and then 20 people, they can come up and debate them. I would do that. I'll take on 500 men, you know, of JJ debates, and we can hit the bell. And but yeah, that was fun and appreciate it. And it was awesome talking to you, man.
Yeah, man. Hey, appreciate you, man. Hey, shout out to everybody in the chat, man. We love y'all, and we are outie, man. Let's go.